ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 9, Dhruva Mahārāja returns home. So we are in the section where now Maitreya Muni, we are starting of the new section, that is, Maitreya Muni is going to explain Dhruva's regret. Vidura has a question, why even after such a great achievement, why did there was a feeling of dissatisfaction in the heart of Dhruva? And Srila Prabhupada writes that this important verse is being very elaborately discussed by many stalwart commentators, and Prabhupada also writes very elaborate purport. So we are in the middle of the purport, text 29. Yeah, please continue.
In this verse, Maitreya replied to Vidura that Dhruva Maharaj, influenced by a revengeful attitude towards his insulting stepmother, did not think of mukti, nor did he know what mukti was. Therefore, he failed to aim for mukti as his goal in life. But a pure devotee also does not want liberation. He is a soul completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord, and he does not demand anything from the Lord. This position was realized by Dhruva Maharaj when he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead present personally before him, because he was elevated to the Vasudeva platform. The Vasudeva platform refers to the stage at which material contamination is conspicuous by absence only, or in other words, where there is no question of the material modes of nature, that is, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And one can therefore see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because on the Vasudeva platform, one can see God face to face, the Lord is also called Vasudeva. Dhruva Maharaj's demand was for a position so exalted that it was never enjoyed even by Lord Brahma, his great grandfather. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is so affectionate and kind towards his devotee, especially to a devotee like Dhruva Maharaj, who went to render a devotional service in the forest alone at the age of only 5 years. That although the motive might be impure, the Lord does not consider the motive. He is concerned with the service. But if a devotee has a particular motive, the Lord directly or indirectly knows it, and therefore he does not leave the devotee's material desires unfulfilled. These are some of the special favors by the Lord to a devotee. Dhruva Maharaj was offered Dhruva Loka, a planet that was never resided upon by any conditioned soul. Even Brahma, although the topmost living creature within this universe, was not allowed to enter the Dhruva Loka. Whenever there is a crisis within this universe, the demigods go to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kshirodakshai Viṣṇu, and they stand on the on the beach of Milk Ocean. So the fulfillment of Dhruva Maharaja's demand, a position more exalted than that of even his great grandfather Brahma, was offered to him. Here in this verse, the Lord is described
We'll
as
go in
Muktipati.
sections, yeah. Okay. So now Srila Prabhupada explains that in this verse, Maitreya replied that Dhruva Maharaj, the beginning point of his devotional service was not any affection to the Lord or not any, jidnyasa about the Supreme Lord, but it was the a revengeful attitude towards his insulting mother. The stepmother, Suruchi, that insulted Dhruva, and he wanted to take revenge on her by attaining a position far greater. And thus he failed to aim for mukti in his life. Again, we know the difference between mukti and moksha, right? So devotee aspires for mukti, not moksha. Moksha is a liberation from birth and death. Samsara se moksha prapta karna. Mukti is mukti rihitmanyatha rupam swarupena vyavasthiti. And that mukti is jiver swarupa hai krishnera nityadas. So mukti is to attain swarupa, swarupa is to attain krishnera nityadas, and that is devotional service. So another thing is, a completely surrendered soul who is a pure devotee will not demand anything from the Supreme Lord. But that was hardly the case with Dhruva. He clearly wanted an object for the exchange of his devotional service. That was the starting point. Of course, later he was elevated to the Vasudeva platform where he transcended the three modes of material nature and he could see God face to face, Lord Vasudeva. But still, at the starting point, and therefore, the devotional service of Dhruva is categorized in the mode of Rajoguna, Rajasi Bhakti, that is performed by Dhruva Mahārāja. But he got purified of the Rajoguna. He came to the Vasudeva platform, saw Lord Vasudeva face to face, and became eventually a pure devotee. Now, Dhruva's demand was so exalted that has been never enjoyed even by Lord Brahma. Abrahma bhuvanaloka punaravartino Arjuna. We know that from Bhagavad Gita says, right from the planet of Brahmalok up to all other planets within this universe, they are subject to destruction, but not Dhruva Loka. And not only that, not Dhruva Loka. So somebody may say, that look at the motive of Dhruva and what he attained. Prabhupada writes here, the Lord does not consider the motive. He sees the devotional service. Classic example is Bhakti. Bhakti is Putana. She applied Kalakuta poison on her breast. She took a form of a mother. And what is more sacred than a mother and the child who is completely dependent on mother in this world? That is the most delicate, most sacred relationship. And she took that form, but Krishna only saw that, oh, my mother is coming and she wants to feed me milk, completely assiding the fact that she has actually applied Kalakuta. Of course, she got the result because of the material nature, because of she was purified of that nature, but ultimately she got the destination, that is mother of the Lord in the spiritual world. That is celebrated in Bhagavatam. Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jighansaya apayatatapi sadhvi lebhe gatim dhatrimuchitam tatonyam kamvadayalum sharanam brajema. This is because the Lord will not consider the motive, he will consider only the service. But it is devotee has a particular motive, Lord will directly or indirectly knows it, and he will offer special favor to such a devotee, although devotee will later regret to have such a motive. Classic example is Dhruva here. Now Dhruva obtained Dhruva Loka. Now Dhruva Loka is so exalted that even Lord Brahma cannot enter Dhruva Loka. Previously, Prabhupada has very clearly written here and citing the great commentators that Dhruva Loka is a place where actually there is a milk ocean, and within that milk ocean there is an island called as Shvetadvipa, and there the Supreme Lord resides. And whenever, so here Prabhupada writes that Brahmaji was not allowed to enter the Dhruva Loka. Right. So the fulfillment of Dhruva's demand, a position more exalted than his great-grandfather Brahma, was offered to him. Yeah, please continue.
Here in this verse, the Lord is described as Muktipati, which means one under whose lotus feet there are all kinds of mukti. There are 5 kinds of mukti: Sayujya, Sarupya, Salokya, Samipya, and Sarstri. Out of these 5 muktis, which can be achieved by any person engaged in devotional service to the Lord, the one which is known as Sayujya is generally demanded by Mayavadi philosophers. The demand to become one with the impersonal Brahman effulgence of the Lord. In the opinion of many scholars, this Sayujya Mukti, although counted among the 5 kinds of mukti is not actually mukti, because from Sayujya mukti one may again fall down to this material world. This information we have from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 10.2.32, wherein it is said, Patanti Adaha, which means they again fall down. The monist philosophers, after executing severe austerity, merges into the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. But the living entity always wants reciprocation in loving affairs. Therefore, although the monist philosopher is elevated to the status of being one with the effulgence of the Lord, because there is no facility for associating with the Lord and rendering service unto him, he again falls into this material world, and his service propensity is satisfied by materialistic welfare activities like humanitarianism, altruism, and philanthropy. There are many instances of such fall downs even for great sannyasis in the Mayavada school. Therefore, Vaishnava philosophers do not accept Sayujya Mukti to be within the category of Mukti. According to them, Mukti means transferal to the loving service of the Lord from one's position of serving Maya. Lord Chaitanya also says in this connection that the constitutional position of a living entity is to render service to the Lord. That is real Mukti. When one is situated in his original position, giving up artificial positions, he is called Mukta or liberated. In the Bhagavad Gita, this is confirmed. Anyone who engages in rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord is considered to be Mukta or Mukta, Brahma Mukta. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that a devotee is considered to be on the Brahma Bhuta platform when he has no material contamination. In the Padma Puran, this is also confirmed. Mukti means engagement in the service of the Lord.
Yes. So now here, the Lord is described here as Muktipati. Muktipati is the personality who is one under whose lotus feet all kinds of muktis are residing. So there are 5 kinds of muktis: Sayujya, Sarupya, Salokya, Samipya, and Sarashtri. And out of this, Srila Prabhupada writes that Sayujya is generally demanded by Mayavadi philosophers. They want to merge into the Supreme. There is one Abhanga also, Devachiya Dwari, Ubhakshana Bhari, Tene Mukti Chari Sadhiyeda. So Vaishnavas will always aspire for only 4 types of mukti and not the mukti of Sayujya, merging into the Supreme Lord. That is left for whom? For the Mayavadis who think they will become one with the Supreme. So that is actually not a mukti, because that is a very temporary position, right? Because they have not taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Ye aravindakshi vimuktamanina tvayeva bhavat avishuddha buddhayah aruya krishnena parampadam tataha patanti adha anadrita yushmadangrayah. Because they have not taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, patanti adha. For the want of a better activity, they will be again engaged into material activity. This is very, very important thing, right? So many organizations begin as spiritual organizations, but because they fail to follow the path of Bhagavad Gita and Śrīmad Bhāgavatam as it is, more often than not, the spiritual organization will turn itself into civil organization or another material organization. That doesn't mean that civil work is not important. That doesn't mean that ISKCON doesn't do any, the social work. The billions of plates of prasada is being distributed, and the flood relief camps and Barsana eye camps and Bhakti Vedanta hospital. That is the part of. At the same time, the goal of the organization should remain the spiritual elevation of the people in general, and not just offering material comforts. So this is generally the flaw with Sayujya Mukti. For the want of better engagement, they turn to material engagement. Classic example is, if a devotee is a progressing devotee, and if he is not engaged in service, if he is not engaged in the spiritual activities, if he is not engaged in taking spiritual anxiety, then what will happen? Then the devotee will be discussing more about politics, Jyotish, cinema, this cinema, that cinema, and then patriotic cinema. So it begins with patriotism. It will begin with how Bharat is a Mahan Desh. forgetting that, Mahaprabhu has described Bharat Bhumite Manushya Janma Jaila Yar Janma Sarthaka Kari Kara Paropakar. So if we fail to have spiritual engagement, the vacuum will be filled by material engagement. It is very important. Of course, we have to apply it in a balanced way, not any tantrum kind of a way, disrupting one's family life or something like that. But this is a very important thing. And this is a daily choice. It is not that I'm speaking these big things, but I myself catch myself so many times, or my wife or daughter, they will catch me, that Papa, how long you are watching that YouTube Bihar results. So we have to fill ourselves with spiritual activity, right? There, because we are part of the society, there will be some material activity, or the other activities, but consciously we have choice, and consciously we have to fill our choice with spiritual choice. This is very important. Otherwise, there is always a danger of going down, and going down is very fast. Very quickly we will just roll back to those reels and those cinemas and other things, where otherwise we may feel a FOMO kind of a feeling we may have. And therefore, this happens with Mayavadi philosophers. Again, they will glide down to the material platform and being engaged in the material activity. And therefore, Prabhupada says, Vaishnava philosophers do not accept the Sayujya Mukti. And now Srila Prabhupada here beautifully defines what is Mukti. That shloka is from actually Padma Puran. Muktir hitvanyatha rupam swarupena vivastiti. That Mukti means to be established in one's Swarupa. We asked you question, what is Mukti? You said Swarupa. Next question is, what is Swarupa? What is Swarupa is Jivera Swarupa hai Krishnera Nityadas. So what is the Mukti? Mukti means engagement in devotional service, and that is called as real Mukti. Yeah, please continue.
The great sage Maitreya explained that Dhruva Mahārāja did not desire in the beginning to engage in the service of the Lord, but he wanted an exalted position better than his great-grandfathers. This is more or less not service to the Lord, but service to the senses. Even if one gets the position of Brahma, the most exalted position in this material world, he is a conditioned soul. Srila Prabhonanda Saraswati says that if one is elevated to real pure devotional service, he considers even great demigods like Brahma and Indra to be on an equal level with an insignificant insect. The reason is that an insignificant insect has a desire for sense gratification, and even a great personality like Lord Brahma also wants to dominate this material nature. Sense gratification means domination over material nature. The whole competition between conditioned souls is based upon domination of this material nature. Modern scientists are proud of their knowledge because they are discovering new methods to dominate the laws of material nature. They think that this is the advancement of human civilization. The more they can dominate the material laws, the more advanced they are. Dhruva Mahārāja's propensity in the beginning was like that. He wanted to dominate this material world in a greater position than Lord Brahma. Therefore, elsewhere it is described that after the appearance of the Lord, when Dhruva Mahārāja thought and compared his determination to his final reward, he realized that he wanted a few particles of broken glass, but instead had received many diamonds. As soon as he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, he immediately became conscious of the unimportance of his demand from the Lord to have an exalted position better than Lord Brahma's. When Dhruva Mahārāja...
So here,
Yes,
now
Lord.
Prabhupada explains that the great sage Maitreya, he is explaining that Dhruva Maharaj did not desire devotional service in the beginning. What he wanted? He wanted exalted position. I am insulted. I want exalted position. That is Dhruva's. And that is purely sense gratification. And then Srila Prabhupada very beautifully defines what is sense gratification. What is sense gratification? Sense gratification means dominion over the material nature. I am the enjoyer. Ishwaroham, aham bhogi, siddhoham, balavan sukhi. Everything exists for my enjoyment. I am the center. This is called as sense gratification. And in the material world, all conditioned souls are struggling with this dominion over the material nature. What is the modern science doing? Okay, modern science is trying to reverse the laws of material nature, right? trying to reverse the miseries that we have. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanu darshanam. Matra sparashastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhada. Right? So to remove Shita, Ushna, there is a different industry. To remove Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, there is different types of industry. And the material even may think that more we can dominate the material laws, the more advanced we are. One day, Prabhupada was in America and they said that, Prabhupada, Swamiji, this is the place, this is the place where the mortality rate is the least in the world. Prabhupada smiled and said, mortality rate is everywhere in the world, is the same is same everywhere in the world. It is 100%. Jatasya dhruvam mrityu, dhruvam janma mritasya cha. So, the position of Dhruva Mahārāja at the beginning of his yoga process was that it was the extended sense gratification. What was the glory? The glory was that he included Krishna in his sense gratification. He did not go to gym and trying to make his body and create some army and attack on Uttanapad or something like that, his own father. No. He followed the path of devotional service and then everything became glorious. That's why Bhagavad Gita says, Artho jidnyasur artharthi jnani cha bharatarshava. Udara sarva evaite. All of them are great personalities. Why? Because although for their own selfish desire they are coming to Krishna, why they? Although we may come to Krishna for our own selfish desires, but the choice of coming to Krishna pleases the Supreme Lord. Finally, he has come home. Garbhapsi, right? And therefore, that makes the great difference. Further, Srila Prabhupada explains that this was the beginning of his devotional service, but as he advanced in his devotional service, he realized the futility of the material desires. Right. He had a great desire. He was a child. These are all extremes. Small child, severely insulted, took that insult very seriously, performed severe austerities, and for an unimaginable task. Right. What is unimaginable task? Having Dhruva Loka. Just like some child starts study and says that, Papa, I'm studying because I can get, when I grow bigger in my life, I want to have the Nobel Prize in physics, chemistry, biology, peace, and literature, and all 6-7 Nobel Prize I want to have. I want to become Bharat Ratna, I want to become Padma Shri, I want to have all the big the civil honors of all the countries. And this is something like extraordinary demand, and this is like not even a fig compared to the demand of Dhruva that he had. He wanted a padavi which is greater than Brahma, and he performed unimaginable. But in the course of the austerities, he realized the futility of his material desire. Srila Prabhupada beautifully quotes this prayer by Prabodhananda Saraswati. Vishvam purna sukhayate vidhi mahendradischa kitayate yat karunya kataksha vaibhavatim tvam gaurame vastumah. That that one may begin devotional service for any reason, for material reason, but as one begins devotional service, the purification will start in itself. And then what one aspired for, one will attain, one may not attain, depending on whether it is useful for him in the progressive path of the devotional service, but the purification is guaranteed. So as Dhruva became more advanced, he realized, Kachan vichinvan apidivyaratnam. There is a beautiful prayer. Swamin krutarthosmi varam nayache. Prahlad is saying that, my dear Lord, I have no desire. I was praying for the broken pieces of a glass. Why broken pieces of a glass? First thing is they glitter. They are like glittering. And second thing is, if you give the child very glittering broken glass in his hand, and the child will try to play, that the play will hurt the child very badly. So one thing, they glitter, and second thing is they are harmful, considering the ultimate goal of every living entity. And therefore, but Lord said, no, Dhruva, now you have to take it. You prayed for this. People will think otherwise, you don't go to Viṣṇu. You worship Lord Viṣṇu and you will forget your material desires. You be in that mode of, this doesn't belong to you, but I have to fulfill your desire because this is where you started devotional service. One devotee very beautifully puts it. He says that Just remember your first desire, why you became a devotee. Very, very first desire, and that is very quiet, well fulfilled. Right? So one can see what was one first desire when one became a devotee. When Mataji, she was saying that Prabhuji, I am having so much trouble from my sas. I asked her, what was your first desire? She said that my first desire that I should get a devotee husband. I said, did you get it? I said, yeah, Prabhuji, husband is very good. Sas is doing sas ka work very nicely. Yeah, at least, husband is very good. That is the thing. So this is, as soon as he saw the Supreme Lord, he immediately became conscious of the unimportance of his demand. This is Dhruva Maharaj. Yeah, please continue.
When Dhruva Maharaj became situated on the Vasudeva platform, due to seeing the Lord face to face, all his material contamination was cleared. Thus, he became ashamed of what his demands were and what he had achieved. He was very much ashamed to think that although he had gone to Madhuvana, giving up the kingdom of his father, he had gotten a spiritual master like Narada Muni. He was still thinking of revenge against his stepmother and wanted to occupy an exalted post within this material world. These were the causes for his moroseness, even after he received all the desired benedictions from the Lord. When Dhruva Maharaj actually saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there was no question of a revengeful attitude towards his stepmother, nor any aspiration to lord it over the material world. But the Supreme Personality is so kind that he knew that Dhruva Maharaj wanted this. Speaking before Dhruva Maharaj, he used the word Vedaham because when Dhruva Maharaj demanded material benefits, the Lord was present within his heart and so knew everything. The Lord always knows everything a man is thinking. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita also. Vedaham samatitani. The Lord fulfilled all Dhruva Maharaj's desire. His revengeful attitude towards his stepmother and stepfather was satisfied. His desire for more exalted position than of his great-grandfather was also fulfilled. At the same time, his eternal position in Dhruva Loka was fixed. Although Dhruva Maharaj's achievement of an eternal planet was not conceived of by him, Krishna thought, what will Dhruva do with an exalted position within this material world? Therefore, he gave Dhruva the opportunity to rule this material world for 36,000 years with unchangeable senses and the chance to perform many great sacrifices, and thus become the most reputed king within this material world. And after finishing with all this material enjoyment, Dhruva would promote to the spiritual world, which includes the Dhruva Loka. Hare Krishna.
So when Dhruva became situated in the Vasudeva platform, then he became ashamed of his demands. What was his demand? He was vengeful towards his stepmother. And also Dhruva is 5 years old, that we all should always remember. He was also vengeful towards his stepbrother. And both these demands were satisfied. He wanted exalted position more than Lord Brahma, his own great-grandfather. That was also satisfied. So, but his demand, he himself was very shameful of having such desires. He was thinking, I got such a spiritual master, Narada Muni. He came across me. I got the darshan of the Lord. And the end, what I asked for, just like you accidentally happen to move on Marine Drive or Nariman Point somewhere, and suddenly you come across Ambani ji, and he asks you, ask anything that you want. And you said, oh, just sponsor that vada pav ka plate. Can you give me vada pav ka plate? And he said, okay, take it. 20 rupees vada pav plate. Then you realize, I was standing in front of the richest man in India. I could have asked for so many different things. This was the condition of Dhruva. He was thinking, what did I pray for? What did I start for? I got Narada Muni as Guru. I got the darshan of the Supreme Lord, which even Lord Brahma doesn't receive. And what did I want? Kachan Vichinvan. I am looking for the broken pieces of glass. But till the time see, one thing is, it is to have this realization without having it, and have this realization after having it and living through it. These are different things, right? So most of the times, most of us will have to go through the purificatory process ultimately to realize that it just doesn't mean anything. But you have to go through the process. Like after completing my PhD, I realized the education is, not that great. But you have to go through that ordeal of completing BTech, MTech, GATE studies, PhD, guide, this and that. And then you realize finally that it is nothing. Then it is a very lasting and, the transformative realization. So this was the case of Dhruva Mahārāja. Lord knew the desire of Dhruva. Vedaham, the Lord says. And similarly, Prabhupada writes, the Lord always knows everything a man is thinking. Man, woman, any living entity is thinking. Okay. So whatever our thoughts are, Lord is cognizant of the thoughts. Because he is Antaryami, Vedaham Samatitani. Dhruva received such a great benediction. So Dhruva was awarded all his desires. He ruled the material planet for 36,000 years without any diminish of his sensual powers. And at the end, he returned to the spiritual world, which includes Dhruva Loka. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, प्रश्न है.
Yes.
हरे कृष्ण.
Hare Krishna.
मराठीत विचारू का इंग्लिश?
प्रभूजी.
तर आता जसं ध्रुव महाराज सोबत इनजस्टिस झालं होतं आणि त्यांनी घोर तपश्चर्या केली आणि ध्रुव प्लॅनेट मिळालं, पण आजच्या युगामध्ये जेव्हा आपल्यासोबत इनजस्टिस होतं तेव्हा काय करायला पाहिजे?
See, the first thing is that whenever we have injustice, when Pandavas suffered injustice, their justice department and the victim, they were the same themselves, right? So Pandavas fought back very valiantly because that was their duty also, and they were king themselves also. It's like so they themselves are the victim, they themselves are the police, they themselves are the judge. But in our case, we have to see the first thing is whether the injustice is real injustice or not. And another thing is that, again, it's not to minimize anybody's injustice, but the point is that sometimes I have seen in my life, sometimes we may ourselves exaggerate that it may or may not be as bad as we think. Like one time I was thinking, oh, such a bad thing and this and that. But then later I realized that it was not such a bad thing anyways. Of course, it was bad, but not such a bad, which I was, because when the mind is focused on something, mind will always expand. That is one. Second thing is, if the injustice is really, in what way it is hurting us, that also we have to see. Because see, what happens is our energy is limited. And that limited energy only we can give that limited energy for this or that. So we have to very wisely choose. Do we want to spend our limited energy in correcting that situation? Like Vidura was such a greatly injustice there was. He was thrown out by Duryodhan before the war. And Vidura took it differently. Pandavas at different times, they took it differently. Different Pandava took the injustice differently. Bhima always wanted revenge. He is a pure devotee. Yudhishthira Maharaj always wanted forgiveness. He is also a pure devotee. So, so we have to see the time, place, circumstance, the nature of the things happening. And then accordingly, we have to derive a right conclusion, keeping our Krishna consciousness in center and priority. Right.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you.